My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 72 years old. And I live in a town so small that when someone sneezes at the entrance, by the time they reach the exit, someone's already saying, "Bless you." Willow Creek. That place where everyone knows everything. Where curtains move on their own when something happens. Where you know the neighbor's dog's name, and even what blood pressure meds it's on. I never imagined that I, the quiet lady, gray-haired, with hands rough from the garden soil, would become the talk of the town. I was always reserved. Polite. The kind who says hello, smiles, and goes on with her day. Until that gray Monday in September. Dr. Mauricio looked at me strangely, like it was hard for him to tell me something he didn't quite understand himself. And with that half-shaky voice, he said, "Mrs. Evelyn, you're expecting a baby." What? A what? I felt the ground vanish under my feet, my legs buckled, my head buzzed. I thought I'd heard wrong. That the doctor was mistaken. That the test was faulty. I don't know. Something. Me, pregnant. At 61 years old. I thought my body had shut down that factory long ago. I thought there was nothing fertile left inside me. But yes. I was pregnant. By a man 30 years younger. And that's when the real chaos began. Because in Willow Creek, news doesn't just fly, it burns. She's lost her mind, some said. She's just trying to trap that young guy, others claimed. Some, with no filter, told me it was God's punishment. Punishment? For what? For daring to feel again. Daniel, the father, showed up with nothing but the clothes on his back, and a smile that could soften your soul. He came to fix roofs, doors, plumbing, and without meaning to, ended up fixing my heart. Because I wasn't looking for love. But I needed it. My daughters. Oh, my daughters. Claire, the eldest, came crying, as if I were dying. Amy, the younger, arrived with crossed arms, and a judgment ready. "You're acting recklessly," she said. "You're making a fool of yourself." As if loving someone, as if bringing a new life, were something shameful. And that wasn't the worst of it. The hardest part was watching people leave me. The women who used to come for coffee, disappeared. At church, the pew I always sat in, emptied. As if I were contagious. But it wasn't a disease. It was life. Pure. Beating inside me. I cried in the bathroom. Covered my mouth so Daniel wouldn't hear. I asked God for strength, clarity, courage. Because in all that noise, one thing shone like a beacon. This child was not a mistake. He was a gift. And I was going to love him, with every piece of soul I had left. That's how this invisible old woman, Evelyn Carter, became the loudest rumor in Willow Creek. The crazy lady who got pregnant at 61. But no one imagined that was just the beginning. The prologue to a story that would change many lives. Including mine. Willow Creek is tiny, but it has soul. A plaza where grandmothers gossip, and grandfathers play dominoes under the old mango tree. They say that tree was planted by the first settler. I was born here. Married Henry here. He died 15 years ago, fixing the back fence. A heart attack. Just like that. No warning. He was a good man. Quiet. Hardworking. Since then, I've lived alone in this house with the blue shutters. With my chickens. My garden. My memories. Claire and Amy moved away years ago. They live in Sao Paulo. Rarely call. Send gifts for Christmas, sometimes for Easter. Claire is a dentist. She has 2 children who barely know me. Amy works in tech, or something like that. Says she doesn't want kids, because this world is too crazy. They're always busy. Always have something more important. I had grown used to the loneliness. I had my church friends, the Wednesday sewing club at Mrs. Hattie's house, and my garden, which I cared for with love. Sometimes I went to Lila's for coffee. We told the same gossip as always: who got married, who split up, who owes Mr. Bennett. Everything was the same. Until that gray Monday in September. That day, everything changed. The night before, there had been one of those merciless storms. Strong. Long. Miserable. And my roof, which had been complaining with every rain, finally gave out. 3 leaks. 3. I set pots all over the house. A symphony of drip, 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 that drilled into my head all night. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, thinking about how to fix it, about who could help me without charging me an arm and a leg. The next morning, I went to the market, hoping to find someone who knew about roofs. Or at least about nails. And that's when I saw him. For the first time. Tall. Sun-darkened skin. Strong arms, the kind that come from working with your body your whole life. And a smile, shy, but honest. He was carrying a ladder over one shoulder, and a toolbox in the other hand. A small sign hung from his backpack. I do everything. Masonry. Plumbing. Electricity. He wasn't from around here, that was obvious. His accent gave him away. "Good morning, ma'am." "Need help?" he said. And me. Me, who never talks to strangers. Found myself telling him everything about the roof. About the rain. About how hard it is to find someone who works well, without trying to take advantage. He listened, without interrupting. Eyes fixed on mine. Brown eyes. But not the kind that look at you with pity. No. They were full of respect. Genuine attention. His name was Daniel. He was 34. He came from Labras, a town far away. Had lost his job in construction, and had been moving from town to town, surviving with odd jobs. "Don't worry, ma'am," he told me calmly. "I'll fix it right. No tricks. Guaranteed work." And I don't know why. But I believed him. We set a time for the next day. Early morning. I offered to give him some money in advance, but he firmly refused. Only once the work is done, and you're happy with it. That night. I don't know how to explain it. The house, though just as quiet, felt different. Less empty. Like someone was already living in the air. I cleaned the back room. Just in case he needed to stay a few days. I baked a cornmeal cake, the kind that crumbles at the slightest touch. Opened the best bag of coffee I'd been saving. My hands trembled. As if I were expecting someone important. Daniel arrived on time. 7 a.m. sharp. Punctual as a clock. I was in the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee floating through the air like a caress. I saw him through the window, setting up his ladder, taking out each tool carefully, as if they were sacred objects. His hands were large, marked from labor. But he moved with a gentleness. Like he was holding a paintbrush, not a hammer. I made him a simple breakfast, but with love. Homemade bread. Corn cake. Cheese that Lila had brought me. And guava jam I made myself. I offered him a bite before he climbed the roof. "No need," he said, a little shy. But he accepted. And ate, as if he hadn't eaten in days. "Mrs. Evelyn, this is the best coffee I've had in months," he said, smiling in a way that left me speechless. While he worked, I tried to keep busy. Pretended to clean, organize. But the truth is, every 5 minutes I made up an excuse to go outside and watch him. And every time I looked, there he was. Focused. Sweat running down his face. Arms lifted as he worked. And when he noticed me watching, that smile. Small. Sincere. Something stirred in me. Something I thought was long dead. At the end of the day, he came down the ladder. His face was smeared with cement, and his hair was a mess. But his eyes, still just as attentive. I'm going to need a couple more days. The damage is worse than we thought, he explained. I offered him the back room. Didn't want him running around looking for a place to sleep. He accepted, with a kind of gratitude that doesn't need words. You just feel it. And that's how it all began. A man who came just to fix my roof. But without realizing it, was fixing something much older. Much more fragile. Much more broken. My heart. I'll need a few more days. The damage is worse than we thought, Daniel said, wiping the sweat from his brow. I offered him the back room. I didn't want him out there looking for a place to sleep. He accepted. With that look of his, the one that never asked for anything, but was full of gratitude. And just like that, it began. A man who came to fix the roof on my house. But without even knowing it, he was rebuilding something much more fragile. My heart. By the third day, he finished with the tiles. But then he mentioned the beams. And after that, the gutters. I knew he was making excuses. And he knew I was letting him. Because neither of us wanted him to leave. The house felt different with him in it. More alive. Warmer. More human. It wasn't just my footsteps echoing on the wooden floor anymore. It was his laughter in the garden. His voice asking if I wanted another cup of coffee. His calloused hands brushing past my roses. Our conversation started off simple. I told him about the strong coffee I liked in the mornings. He joked that even a man who works with cement can have soft hands. And before we realized it, we were sharing stories like old friends. He told me about his rough childhood. How his father left when he was just a boy. The years he spent working on job sites, learning to build walls straighter than any engineer. His dream of one day having a house of his own. A family. Something he'd never had, always moving from place to place. I told him about Henry. About becoming a widow. About my daughters, and how far away they felt, in miles, and in heart. I showed him my old leather photo album. My embroidery. My garden. And Daniel looked at me, not like someone waiting for his turn to speak. No. He listened. Really listened. Fully present. That kind of gaze, the one that takes you apart without ever touching you. A week after he arrived, we were sitting on the porch. Chamomile tea in hand. Quiet. Then, suddenly, he took my hand. Said nothing at first. Just held it. Warm. Steady. Rough, but gentle in the way he touched me. And without warning. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Mrs. Evelyn, you're the most special woman I've ever met, he murmured. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a move. It was a truth, raw and naked. That was the beginning. Though we didn't even realize it had begun. Little by little, he stayed longer. He no longer just slept in the back room. He spent nearly the whole day with me. We watched TV together. Tended the garden. Went to the market. He taught me how to make arroz a la Maneira with golden garlic. I taught him how to make pumpkin jam with coconut. And without knowing it, we were becoming each other's company. But in Willow Creek, nothing goes unnoticed. It only took a few sightings of him leaving my house twice a week, for the rumors to erupt. First came the whispers. Then the laughter behind hands. Then, the pointed comments thrown like stones. Evelyn wants to be a grandmother by force, shouted Mrs. Odette at the butcher's, laughing too loudly. A woman her age with a boy that young? How shameful, said another, avoiding eye contact as I walked in. And when I entered any room, silence. Stares. Tongue sharpened. At the corner store, Teresa, my old classmate, grabbed my arm. Evelyn, that guy's just after your money. Open your eyes. I told her the truth. I didn't have money. just a modest pension. And this house Henry left me. She shook her head, like I was some foolish child. Even the church. My refuge for more than 40 years. The bench where I always sat, started to empty. The women in the prayer group stopped inviting me. And Father Andrew, during his Sunday sermon, spoke about inappropriate behavior at a certain age, while looking right at me. But I didn't leave. I stayed. Endured every look. Every whisper. Until the storm reached Sao Paulo. One Friday afternoon, my daughters showed up. Claire and Amy. The same daughters who hadn't called even on my birthday. They came in like firefighters to a blaze. Claire, frantic. Shouting. Looking for that freeloader, as she called him. Amy, quieter, but her eyes heavy with judgment. Mom, what are you doing? The whole town is talking. It's embarrassing, Amy said, soft voice, but with a cracked heart. Claire stormed through the house like she was looking for crime scene evidence. That man is going to take everything from you. Can't you see that? Amy just cried. Mom, we're worried. He's so young. What could he want from a 61-year-old woman? I let them say everything they needed to say. All the things they hadn't said in years, they said that day. When they were done, I looked at them. Calm. Firm. Filled with something I didn't know I had. You left me alone for years. Never called. Never asked if I was eating, breathing, if I was even alive. But now that someone makes me smile. Now you show up to give me lessons? Silence. Claire still fumed. Said she'd talk to a lawyer. Said I wasn't thinking clearly. Amy cried harder. But said nothing else. And then Daniel walked in. He stopped when he saw the scene. Was about to turn around and leave. But I stopped him. This is Daniel. He's here because I want him here. Because he respects me. And treats me the way no one has in a very, very long time. Monday came. After Claire and Amy left, still threatening to return with a lawyer, I sat with Daniel on the porch. The afternoon was peaceful. But my mind was a storm. I looked at him, straight to the point. Do you want to leave? Maybe it's for the best, to avoid more trouble. Daniel looked at me calmly, with that quiet steadiness of his that always managed to bring peace to my racing thoughts. Mrs. Evelyn, he said, voice soft but certain, I'll only leave if you ask me to. Because what we've built here, it's worth more than all the gossip in town. And there, in that little corner of the porch, under the gentle sun, with our neighbor Martha pretending to hang clothes just to spy over the fence. Daniel kissed me. It was a slow kiss. Careful. Tender. One of those kisses not given with the mouth, but with the soul. And at that moment, I remembered something I hadn't felt in years. I was alive. Truly alive. And I had the right to love. And to be loved. Nobody in Willow Creek could understand it. Because nobody really looked inside. They just judged from the sidewalk. But inside these walls, we were just two people. Two tired souls. Who found each other when no one else was looking. And that, no one had the right to question. 3 months passed since Daniel moved into my home. Everything felt natural. Flowing. Until something started to feel off. At first, I blamed the fatigue. I was cooking more, cleaning more, keeping the garden in its best shape ever. Of course I was tired, I was 61. But then, the dizziness started. The moment I put my feet on the ground each morning, the world would spin. And worst of all, the coffee. That coffee I adored, suddenly, it made me nauseous. Even the smell of the roses Daniel had planted now made me gag. It's probably just a bug, I told Daniel one morning, trying to brush it off while my face lost all its color over breakfast. He didn't say much. But his eyes were worried. He brewed chamomile tea. Brought me ginger to chew. But nothing seemed to work. One day, while we were peeling potatoes in the kitchen, my lifelong friend Lila blurted out the unthinkable. "Evelyn, what if you're pregnant?" I nearly dropped the knife. I laughed so hard I gave myself the hiccups. "Please, Lila. I'm 61. I haven't had a regular cycle in over a decade." She kept peeling, like we were talking about the weather. "My cousin June had a baby at 54. The doctor said she thought she couldn't anymore, stopped being careful. And well, surprise. That sentence haunted me. I hadn't been careful with Daniel either. Why would I? At my age, it never even crossed my mind. But the symptoms kept coming. Hot flashes. Heightened emotions. Dizziness. Sense that now made me sick. Everything pointed in one direction. A few days later, I took the bus to the San Francisco Health Center. I didn't want to go to the local clinic, too many eyes. Too many mouths. The head nurse there, Rita, had been working forever. We knew each other from church, though we'd never been close. When I walked into her office, she adjusted her glasses and gave me a polite smile. "Mrs. Evelyn, what brings you in?" I swallowed hard. Hesitated. Then said it. "I'd like to take a pregnancy test." She looked at me like I'd asked for a ticket to Mars. "A beta HCG," she chuckled nervously. "Evelyn, why?" "Lately I've been feeling off, dizzy, nauseous, hypersensitive to smells. I just want to rule things out." She leaned back in her chair, like she was about to reason with a stubborn child. "At your age, that's probably just high blood pressure. Or vertigo. Let's check your pressure first." "Rita, please," I said firmly. "It's my right. I just want the test." We stared at each other. I wasn't moving. She sighed. "Filled out a form. You'll have to go to the main lab. The results will take 3 days." And those 3 days were eternal. It felt like the clock itself had stopped ticking. Every minute whispered the same question. What if? The day arrived. I returned to the health center with trembling legs, struggling just to breathe. Each step felt heavier than the last. I sat in the waiting room, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. Until I saw Rita step out from behind the door. She didn't call me into her office like usual. Instead, she waved me over to a quiet corner. Her expression had changed. No smirks, no condescension. No smile. Only a stunned, almost frightened look in her eyes. "Evelyn," she whispered, "you're pregnant." My heart pounded so hard it physically hurt. "Are you sure? Could it be a mistake?" She slowly shook her head. Then handed me a paper, filled with medical codes and numbers I didn't understand. But there was one word, bold, in capital letters, that hit me like a wave. Positive. I left the clinic in a daze. The Willow Creek sun burned hotter than ever. I sat on a bench in the town square, and cried. I didn't know if it was from fear. Or disbelief. Or something deeper, a storm of feelings I didn't know how to name. At 61. I was going to be a mother again. Rita sent me to get an ultrasound at a private clinic. I didn't want to wait months in the public system. I pulled the emergency savings from under my mattress. Literally. Each bill smelled of dust and desperation. I needed to be sure. Dr. Benjamin welcomed me. White coat, full gray hair, the kind of man who's clearly seen everything. He spread the cold gel across my belly. I couldn't stop shaking. He had to remind me over and over. Breathe, Mrs. Evelyn. Breathe. Then, without a word, he turned the screen toward me. There's your baby. Around 10 weeks along. And I saw it. A tiny dot. Flickering. A beating heart, inside of me. A life beginning to form. In a place I thought had closed forever. I took 2 more tests at 2 different labs. I didn't want false hope. Didn't want doubt. All three said the same thing. There was no denying it now. I was pregnant. I returned home with my soul in my hands. Daniel was in the backyard, repairing the back fence. He smiled when he saw me. But then noticed the look on my face. Something wrong? You look so pale. I sat down on the wooden bench under the lemon tree. Gestured for him to come over. Pulled the envelope from my purse. Daniel, I know what's been going on. Why I've been feeling sick. He took my hand. His worry was obvious. Is it something serious? That depends on how you look at it, I said, handing him the test results. He opened the paper. Read it slowly. The silence was thick. Then suddenly. A tear. Then another. He dropped to his knees in the damp dirt. Rested his forehead gently on my belly. And held me. Our baby, he whispered, voice breaking. My child. I had never seen a man cry like that. No shame. No holding back. Just pure emotion, like his entire world was breaking apart. Only to rebuild itself, stronger. He cried against my still flat belly, already full of life. And I held him. I cradled him. Because in that moment, I understood something deeper than anything I'd ever known. This child wasn't just going to change my life. He was going to change everything. Lucas was born in the middle of the night. A cold, silent winter night, the kind where even the moon seems to hold its breath. It was a natural birth. He weighed 2.8 kilos. Measured 47 centimeters. Perfect. The moment I held him in my arms for the first time, the world stopped. I didn't hear a thing. I didn't see anything. Just that tiny, warm, soft body, real, alive, resting against my chest. It felt like my story was just beginning. Lucas didn't just bring life into my home. He brought light. And hope. He was living proof that love has no age. That life will always find a crack to slip through, even when everything seems closed forever. I was exhausted. My body ached. But my soul was full. We stayed at the hospital for 2 weeks. Lucas was a little premature, but unbelievably strong. He didn't need an incubator. Didn't need oxygen. The nurses began calling him the miracle of St. Elia. When we were discharged, Daniel arrived at the hospital with the car decorated in baby blue balloons. He had shaved. Wore a clean shirt. And his face was lit up with a joy I can't describe. Coming home felt like entering a new world. Even the old front door creaked differently. As if it knew there were now 3 of us. Lila was the first to visit. She brought a carrot cake and a baby blanket she had knitted herself. Evelyn, he's the most beautiful baby I've ever seen, she said through tears, one hand on her chest. And he was. Lucas had thick black hair, big eyes just like Daniel's. And skin so soft it felt like air. Even from the first day. You could tell. He wasn't like other children. The news spread like wildfire. The same people who used to cross the street to avoid me now showed up at my doorstep with gift baskets, formula, diapers, rattles. They didn't say much out loud. But they all wanted to see the baby. The miracle. Even my daughters. They changed. Claire was the first to hold him. And when Lucas looked up at her, and, without saying a word, seemed to smile, she broke down completely. Mama. I'm so sorry, she cried. I said so many awful things. But he's perfect. Julia, Amy, took a little longer. She arrived with her husband, stiff and serious, still unsure of everything. But then Lucas looked at her, reached out with both little hands, and let out a baby sound that felt like a hello. Something cracked inside her. She hugged him as if hugging a second chance. As if, in that one embrace, she was reclaiming her mother. Even in church, something unexpected happened. Father Thomas, yes, the same one who once preached about improper behavior for certain ages, came to my house. He held Lucas in his arms and cried. "I was wrong, Evelyn," he whispered. "This child is a gift from heaven. Would you allow me to baptize him?" On the day of the baptism, the church was full. People inside. People outside. And when the water touched Lucas's head, the baptismal font overflowed. Some said they smelled fresh roses. Others claimed they saw a special light. But everyone said the same thing. It was a miracle. Lucas grew up like children born under a star. At 10 months, he was walking. At 12, he was speaking in full sentences. By 5, he was planting onions with me in the garden. At school, he was known for his memory and kindness. And with animals, he had a near magical connection. People came just to see him. Some even asked him to place his little hands on them, as if his touch could heal. Today, I'm 72. My knees ache. I get tired more easily. But every one of Lucas's smiles is worth everything. Daniel is still my partner in everything. We argue sometimes. We disagree. But at the end of the day, we always find each other again. We hold hands. We forgive. We love. He built Lucas's crib, repaired the roof, planted sunflowers in our garden. He works as a foreman now. He protects us. He loves us. Sometimes I sit on the porch. I watch Lucas chasing our dog, Marley. I see Daniel come home from work, take off his boots, wash his hands, and kiss me on the forehead. I see my life. So different. So beautiful. I breathe. And I give thanks. I wouldn't change a thing. Not the rumors. Not the looks. Not the judgment. Because this isn't a made-up story. This is my life. And if someone ever tells you that you're too old to dream, too old to love, too old to start again, tell them about me. About a 61-year-old woman who fell in love, who gave birth, and who became happier than she ever imagined.